The Force Unleashed 2 was released in 2010 and is a direct sequel to arguably one of the best Star Wars games of all time. But here's the thing, it's kind of a letdown.
Hey, nobody cares.
Let's start with the graphics. Some of these cutscenes look amazing, especially for the year that this game was released. I was honestly surprised to see how nice of an upgrade the graphics were compared to the first game. You know what? Let me see how long the developers had to make this game. 9 months! The fact that the developers were able to make this game look this good in a short amount of time is insane.
Someone cooked here.
But unfortunately, I think the first misstep for this game was the story. I mean, the fact that the story is only 5 hours long doesn't help. But I don't know, the entire story revolves around if Galen is the real Star Killer, or if he's a clone since he died in the last game, and it just never goes anywhere. The cloning thing could have been really interesting to see, like to have Galen battle with himself throughout the entire game on if he's the original version of himself. That could have been such an interesting story to play through, but it just doesn't happen. There's also the other plotline where Galen is trying to find Juno, and I just didn't think that was interesting either. Like, if I can be completely honest, I don't really get why Galen is so in love with her. He's so in love with her that I feel like the rest of the story just takes a back seat. Like in the last few missions, General Kota will be like, Galen, please, we need help. And he's always like,
How about no?
I could get behind it if their relationship was built up even more in this game, but there's barely even time to develop any kind of story because the game's only 5 hours long. The entire story feels like it was just thrown together and even made some of the missions completely pointless. There's literally one mission where you just go to Dagobah and talk to Yoda, and then it's over. It's just on to the next mission. That could have been turned into something so interesting, but there's only so much you can do with 9 months of development. But let's talk about something I actually enjoy. The gameplay in The Force Unleashed 2 was a great upgrade from the first game. Now, it does play very similar to the previous game, but that's not a bad thing at all. The combat in the first game did a really great job in making you feel overpowered, and I think The Force Unleashed 2 takes it to the next level. There's different enemy types where you can't use your force abilities, and there's others where you can't use your lightsaber, and I think breaking up the enemy types gives you that feeling of still being overpowered, but also keeps you just from button mashing the entire time. The force abilities were also handled really well. I really enjoyed the mix of being able to use the force powers on their own, but also mixing them in with some lightsaber attacks too. The only time the combat starts to get annoying is in the boss fights. In my review of the first game, I said that every mission ended with a boss fight and that it started to get repetitive, but here there's barely any boss fights and they're not good ones. Like the final boss is fighting Darth Vader and it's one of the most boring boss fights I've ever played.
Why is no one having a good time? I specifically requested it.
Like when you're fighting Darth Vader, you would think there would be some type of challenge since he's one of the most powerful bad guys ever, but it's just not there. There's also way too many QuickTime events. Like there's nothing wrong with having a few of them spread out throughout the game, but I swear there's one in like every mission, and on top of that, they're not even that interesting. I do, however, think that the customization was done really well. You have basic costume changes like you had in the first game, but what really steps it up is being able to change your lightsaber color. Now, if it was just the lightsaber color like in the last game, it would still be okay, but what I really liked is that every color had a different power. Like some blades might offer more health or others might replenish your force meter. I just think that was a really nice touch because it allows you to be creative with how you want your character to look and how you want them to play. Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2 was a very interesting game for me. I did have a fun time playing through this, but there's just some things that just really hold this game back from being what it could have been. If this game was just a little bit longer, it made some of the boss fights more engaging, then it could have been on par with the first game and could have even surpassed it. But the fact that the developers made this game in only 9 months, there's really only so much criticism I can give it, because any complaint I have can really just come down to developers not having enough time to make a game. Like some other companies I know that don't give developers the proper amount of time to make games.
Suspicious.
No, it's not.
Anyway, even with its faults, I would definitely recommend this game to players who are fans of the first game, but I really think it's only worth it to pick it up if it's on sale. So with that being said, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2 gets a 6 out of 10.